Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to discuss electric boats, primarily one that started its life here in Salem, Ohio. As you can see, 1932 electric boat, and it was converted by American Waterways in New York. I don't know if it was New York, or what city. I haven't found that one out yet. But knew a lot about this boat. That's what I'm hopefully to put in the cover titles. I found a picture of the darn thing online, sitting in my backyard years ago. Uh, and all the electric run here and the wood shop and stuff, have been added to since then. But this was all done to restore this boat that I had. I was injured from the railroad, and before I was injured, I was too hyperactive to ever sit and restore something like that. After I was injured, I could slow down and, do one thing at a time. Of course, I had no choice. So, a real interesting boat. They call it a steel boat. It's actually double galvanized iron hull. It kind of tricked the competitors into thinking the hull was made out of steel, and actually iron was more rust resistant. And then two layers of zinc coating. It's drop press plates, overlapping countersunk rivets, and then soldered is how they did the hulls, and then wood framing. And that one's just, there's no bent or steamed wood in the more modern Mullins boats. In the older ones, everything had a steamed superstructure. So it's from Mullins. It's Mullen Campmate. It's an inboard hull, come out in the early 30s, and it ran a 4-cylinder Mullins Austin marine motor that would develop 16 horsepower. So, before the Depression put everybody out to work to make all the lakes and wonderful places you enjoy now from the Depression work groups and stuff. They did so much of where people fish, damming rivers and stuff. So the tunnel was a riveted in piece, inverted center stern of the boat, so the propeller could sit, and it had a little piece of vertical steel that came around and protected the propeller, that would come up through there and stuff. So you got, it would hard to think, 90 years ago, but you just don't have the lakes and the depth you have now, because that's when they dammed a lot of stuff for hydroelectric and to get people back to work. So it's the only group I know of that was electrified by another company from the Mullins. There are some Mullen Campmates out there. I haven't known anybody that's restored one or not, but the neighbor gave me a motor because 2 houses over, a manager worked on these boats 90 years ago. So, they're for Washington, D.C. Tidal Basin rentals. You can tell we don't edit a thing, and this is also for my kids and grandkids, should we have them. They can look back and say, hey, this is your grandfather, and this is unedited. This is the way you see him. He's not cutting and pasting stuff. So if you go out to the Tidal Basin now, I've never been there, you rent pedal boats. And I don't know what you rented before these Mullins converted boats. So 90 years ago, in the spring, they got a fleet of battery electric boats. The Hoover administration, that was their last thing before he was voted out, I guess. And one of his relatives ran it, and I guess one of his relatives ran some other administration too. We won't talk about. So galvanized steel boat, like we said, but it's actually iron and double galvanized. Battery operated. I haven't seen any or known the batteries that were in there, but the hull of that thing was rusted out. A guy from Northwest Ohio brought me a boat from the U.S. Navy, U.S. Coast Guard, that was on display at their Coast Guard station. The Navy and Coast Guard used, like Mullins boats, outboard type, without the tunnel hull, It was a hull designed in the late 20s. I've had several of them here in the yard. So I suspect from the batteries were lead acid, and that's probably why the hull was rusted out. So originally, the library from Washington, D.C. sent me the newspaper articles about them being launched, and each one had its own number and stuff. They had Surrey tops, and most of them, the Mullens I had just like that were aluminum deck. The Seagull, which is the dual cockpit runabout in the 1930s, actually has a steel non-galvanized deck. So I didn't get the Surrey top or anything, but I got the rest of the boat, and my health became so bad that I couldn't take care of it and I couldn't restore it, and I didn't want to get into it. Now I could probably tackle it, but after I got out of the nursing home and stuff, I was still kind of pretty crabby for 2 years, and I didn't want to play with paint stripper and sanding and doing all this stuff, and the wood was more rotted. Some guy came from Kentucky and bought the darn thing, and he got to talking, and he forgot the deck. The deck's sitting over here. I'm going to show you in a minute from that electric boat. So before he came up, my neighbors helped me straighten the axle on the trailer and the wheels. It was like an axle from a mobile home, and the wheels held on by the little steel bits. They adjusted and beat them with a hammer till the wheels were all straight and rolled even. But I got all that going. The guy came and got it, and he got to talking about some, I don't know, strange guy on the radio, and the deck was sitting right there, and he took off without it. And by the time I realized a few days later, it was too late. So I guess he's got sort of like a junkyard. He's got a couple Mullen Seagulls down there, he said, but never heard from him again. So pretty cool. It had a little lever system that would do the steering that ran up the center hull of the boat. Steering, it went to the front, and then levered all the way to the back to steer the rudder. And just had a switch forward, off, and reverse. And I can't remember about a throttle or anything. So it must have been slow going, and I'm not sure. They might have had radios on them. Because, I guess it was electrified and stuff. So pretty cool. If you ever get a chance, look it up. Like I said, if this works out, the cover shot's going to be the electric boat sitting in the backyard rotting away. 7 tarps. I was so sick I couldn't keep a battery charged, and it took everything I had to come out here either to charge a battery or to move a car around. It was just pure hell for over a decade. And there's the aluminum deck. You can see it's ripped. You could probably rip it, like thick tinfoil. And you can see a little bit of green on the outside. It would have been green on those outside, and the green in the middle, and cream on those left and right centers. They're a real beautiful boat. The coloring, they're really gorgeous. And when I painted one, an outboard one before, the primer didn't stick, but the paint did. So if I painted one again with the zinc or aluminum, I don't even think I'd use a primer. I just used acrylic enamel from Napa. But that's it. That's an aluminum deck from a 1932 American Waterways converted Mullen Campmate boat for the Tidal Basin in Washington, D.C. 1932. I heard they used them for 2 or 3 years before they were replaced. So I imagine, the battery problems and stuff like that. How long would the batteries last? And then what about the off seasons and stuff? I really would like to go out there sometime and see if they have any more history on that. So pretty cool. So we used to have a whole yard full of damn boats. We got a seat number 2 on the workbench over there. I'm going to get ready to steel wool it, put more polyurethane on there. Seat number 1 is vertical by the pallets. I might flip that up on that same thing, and when I put polyurethane on that one seat 2, I might do the vertical supports of pine underneath seat number 1 just to seal them from the elements, probably just one coat. Usually when it's in a compartment like that, it's not gonna get too awful bad. So still messy up here. I got an old, one of my extension cords, the end went bad on. We were using my dad's old belt sander because the cuts I made on that from different directions didn't line up too good. So we cut a little bit off with the bandsaw, and then we evened it out with new belts I bought from my dad's old belt sander, and I've got a bench belt sander from Harbor Freight over here. I'll tell you how old it is. It was $29 on sale. I think they're like $79. The belt, the bandsaw is from Sears Southern Park Mall that's closed. That's the joiner is from Harbor Freight in Canton, Ohio, on Whipple. Love this new saw. This why can't I think of stuff? What's a sliding? Old brain. Let's see if it's written on here. Well, you know what it is. I sold all kinds of stuff on Facebook to pay for this thing, and then they dropped the price. So I could have kept one more thing. Miter saw. Sliding miter saw, 12-inch or whatever. It's fantastic. Old Harbor Freight table saw that kind of walks sometimes. I finally got the bag put on there and stuff. A Ryobi circular saw I bought for redoing the gazebo and other power tools laying around and stuff. So, and of course we have the router. We've got a hand router and other stuff laying around. So all kinds of stuff up here. We had everything cleaned up, and then we make a mess, then we got to come back and clean it up. So I'll give you a tour of the place whenever I can. There's one of the batteries in seat number 2 from the Smoker Craft Alaskan boat. Brought the battery up here to try to power up Dad's old CB radio, and it was just covered with rust. So it hasn't been run for over a quarter century. So there it is. Electric boat, 1932, and you got to see the deck, and I'll, after it posts, I'll put the thumbnail picture on the title. So take care out there. Talk to you later.